Hey everyone, welcome back to another video. It's Dave here on investing, where we talk about trying to grow our money through investing, researching different companies that we might think are good investments, and just talking about investment strategies. Today I'm just going to give a brief overview of the recent space related stock news we've had lately. So we're talking about Rocket Lab, of course, my favorite. We're talking about Astra, Firefly. We're talking about Virgin Orbit and Virgin Galactic. Just a brief rundown of what's new, what's been going on in the past few weeks to month or so. And hopefully there'll be something in there for everyone, depending on which stock you might hold or which you like the best. If you're new here, I do hope you'll consider hitting like and subscribe by the end of the video if you find it interesting and worthwhile. And with that, let's hop over. So to start off with, obviously, the big exciting news is the success of Rocket Lab's lunar CAPSTONE mission, where they sent a payload for NASA into a near rectilinear orbit around the moon. It's a very, basically a lopsided orbit. So if this is the moon, it's like really close and then way out and then really close and way out. It's never been done before. It is the planned orbit of their new Lunar Gateway space station, and this was just testing it out, making sure everything works okay, performing some measurements and stuff like that. So Rocket Lab used their brand new Photon kickstage spacecraft, where they had to perform several secondary burns to raise the orbit before finally a final burn to send it off to the moon. And all those burns were successful, really proving out the possibilities for this spacecraft and what it can do in the future. Recently, Rocket Lab tweeted out about the potential future missions for the Photon, talking about obviously their recent moon mission, but also Mars mission potential. And they do plan to send a spacecraft to Venus. They want to be the first ever private company to send a satellite to Venus, which would be very exciting. Venus is actually an extremely interesting planet. There's a lot of interesting stuff going on in the upper atmosphere in terms of potential measurements of phosphine gas, and it's a really interesting place that doesn't get a lot of love from the space probes and stuff like that. Mostly head towards Mars. So I'm very excited to see Photon be able to accomplish this. It really opens up a lot of potential for the future and proves they have the capability necessary to send out these small spacecraft. And as we said, technology keeps getting smaller and smaller. Obviously, your cell phone's more powerful than, a mainframe computer the size of a car used to be. So you can do more and more as well with smaller spacecraft. And this capability will really let you send spacecraft to these distant celestial objects for an extremely cheap price. Unfortunately, the stock markets are closed today in the United States. We haven't really been able to see the reaction of the stock. Interesting to see if we get a nice little pop from this or not. Lately, it does seem like the stock market's response to successful launches, successful missions has been fairly muted. And that's okay with me for now. I think the longer the stock stays suppressed, the bigger the pop will be once it finally moves and people realize, this is actually a really solid company. So we'll see what happens tomorrow. And if this video is not uploaded until then, I might just do a quick update and let you guys know what the stock price is. Hey guys, Dave from the future just cutting in here last minute, as I wanted to make a few updates right before I release this video. I'm editing it the next day. First of all, I just wanted to take a look at Rocket Lab stock and see how they reacted to the successful Photon mission, Capstone. More on that in a minute. But as we can see, the stock basically plummeted to start the day, which is a little surprising given the great milestone they just achieved. But to be honest, I think it's just all about the macro markets at this point. Nobody seems to care about basically anything right now, except if the Nasdaq goes up, okay, it'll go up a little bit. If the Nasdaq goes down, we get completely destroyed, regardless of how the actual underlying company is doing. A little bit of a frustrating time right now, but you know what? I'm okay with it, because the longer the stock stays suppressed like this, I think the bigger the pop will eventually have to be when people realize, wow, they're a real company, and we need to value them properly. So, I mean, eventually their price to earnings will just force a higher stock price at some point in the next few years. Having said that, we did bounce back a little throughout the day. You can see it's very similar to the overall NASDAQ Composite Index, where both the index and Rocket Lab had a little comeback throughout the day and closed positive after being down quite a bit to start the day. Now, Rocket Lab did outperform the index a little bit, so I guess that is nice, and you might think that has to do with the Capstone mission, but honestly, I've been looking at a few other growth stocks, and they're all up quite a bit, so it seems like those high growth names just had a good day today. They always seem to move in tandem. I'm looking at names like Teladoc up even more than Rocket Lab. A lot of these type of stocks, these high multiple stocks, jumped up even more than Rocket Lab. So personally, I don't even think this has anything to do with the Capstone mission. Investors just don't seem to care right now, but that's okay, because at some point the growth will be undeniable, and when we get there, we'll have a bigger move. Continuing on, some really unfortunate news here. This actually just came out a little while ago as I was getting ready to add in the stock price. The Capstone satellite that we just launched successfully by Rocket Lab went dark and ceased communicating with its handlers yesterday, and that was shortly after it deployed from the Rocket Lab Photon spacecraft. The spacecraft team currently is working to understand the cause and reestablish contact. The team has good trajectory data for the spacecraft based on the first full and second partial ground station pass, NASA spokesperson Sarah Fraser wrote in an emailed statement today. They also added, if needed, the mission has enough fuel to delay the initial post-separation trajectory correction maneuver for several days. And of course, additional updates will be provided as soon as possible. So really unfortunate news here. So much effort went into this project from NASA, from Rocket Lab, from all sorts of people. Now, I don't believe this has anything to do with Rocket Lab's Photon spacecraft. As far as I can find, they deployed the satellite successfully. I suppose there's the odd chance it somehow got damaged while being released from the Photon, but more likely I think this could be some kind of a software issue or some sort of internal problem with the satellite. So very sad to see so many people put so much hard work into this thing. They only have a few days to reestablish contact and trigger the next burn in order to get it into its proper orbit, from what I can understand here. So if they don't make this burn within the next few days, then they won't be able to get where they're supposed to go, and then the mission will be a failure. Now, having said that, I believe Rocket Lab completed all their obligations successfully. The Photon spacecraft performed perfectly, the rocket performed perfectly, and this is really not on Rocket Lab. The satellite operator is actually Advanced Space LLC. They own and operate the satellite on behalf of NASA. So I believe the responsibility for this failure falls to them, as well as them and NASA trying to reestablish contact. So I believe this won't affect Rocket Lab's earnings in any way, as they completed their mission successfully. But we'll have to follow this story closely, and I'll let you guys know when I have any more information on that. And then an interesting tweet from Peter Beck here, of course, Rocket Lab CEO, mentioned that the Photon spacecraft that deployed the Capstone may not be completely done out there. So it's on a pretty interesting trajectory at this point. They've never sent something that far before, and it still has a bit of fuel left. So they may be able to send it to some interesting places and head out to, who knows where. to explore some secondary missions. So we don't know yet where they are going to send it, but it's very exciting to see that they might get a little more life out of this little spacecraft, send it somewhere else, and maybe do some science, do some testing. Seems like Photon has really performed extremely well on this launch, so congrats to the Rocket Lab team and Peter Beck on that. Now let's head back to your regularly scheduled content. Next up, we have Astra. So as we all know, very sad, they had a failed launch recently with their first stage performing nominally and getting the spacecraft into orbit, but then the second stage shut down, the engine shut down early, and they did not make it to orbit with their payload. This was a NASA payload, Tropics satellites for tracking hurricanes and things like that, and really devastating to the Astra stock, really shaking the confidence a lot of people have had in this company. So we really hope we can get more information on this soon, that they've figured out the cause of the failure and fixed it. We haven't got any news yet. I've been checking their Twitter, checking their webpage, checking any other sources I can find, but there hasn't been much out yet in terms of what they have found with their data review. The contract with NASA calls for 2 more flights by the end of July. At this point, I highly doubt they can meet that target because they need to take the time and figure out what went wrong and make sure it doesn't go wrong in the next one. So that'll be a little disappointing as well. But we did have Thomas Zuckrin from NASA tweeting out that even though we are disappointed right now, we know there is value in taking risks in our overall NASA science portfolio because innovation is required for us to lead. So they are knowingly taking on these risks in order to spur the market and help out new companies and spur innovation in the industry. So all good things. And at least publicly, they are not saying they are disappointed with Astra, just the failure. So seems like that relationship may still be intact, and we'll wait eagerly for more data on the launch failure. Next, Virgin Orbit success. Virgin Orbit launched a rocket carrying 7 satellites from California's Mojave Air and Spaceport early Saturday morning, and this was the first time they successfully launched at night as opposed to during the day. This is where, as you can see, the rocket is carried on the bottom of a 747 plane, flown up basically as high as it can go, and then released and flown the rest of the way from there. So they've had 5 orbital launches over now, and 4 in a row have been successful, so that's good news for Virgin Orbit. We'll look forward to see their next launch. And then, of course, Virgin Galactic. This one's had a few issues lately. Not any launches to talk about, but they have had some new ratings by several research and investment companies. So Truist Financial downgraded shares of Virgin Galactic from a buy to a hold rating and decreased their price target from the stock from $24 to $8. So they slashed it in by 2/3, which is a huge cut to their target. Obviously, a lot of these responses, a lot of these cuts sometimes come in response to the market, where the analysts are almost following the stock down and follow it back up. But nevertheless, a rough cut for their projections. As well, Canaccord Ingenuity Group cut shares of Virgin Galactic from a buy to a hold and reduced their target for the stock from $36 to $8. So brought it all the way back down to that $8 price target, but they originally had an even higher target, so even bigger than a 2/3 drop on that. Now, Wells Fargo and Company started covering Virgin Galactic recently, and they issued a research report on June 21st. They set an underweight rating and a $4 price target, so extremely low price target on Virgin Galactic. They don't seem to have a lot of confidence in the company. And then, of course, Firefly, interesting newcomer to the space. They've only had 1 launch here to date with their Alpha rocket. That launched 9 months ago, lifting off from Vandenberg Space Force Base in California. However, one of the rocket's 4 main engines failed about 15 seconds into the flight, and then the rocket was lost 2 minutes later in a pretty dramatic explosion. That it's fun. It's sad to see, but it's also kind of fun to see the big explosions. I'm not gonna lie. We do hope they have better luck on their next launch, though. The next launch for Firefly is scheduled for July 16th at 8 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time. Now, that's pretty tentative, so it could always change due to a variety of factors. But if you're a Firefly investor, you definitely want to be watching closely around that date and check out the launch coverage that I'm sure will follow. Relativity is not publicly traded at this point, so I haven't included them in the list. And for now, that is all the information we have on space stocks today. Let's head back and wrap up what we've discussed. As always, thanks for watching. It's been an extremely busy time in the space industry lately, and we're looking like we're just going to keep getting busier and busier as there's so many massive projects ramping up. It's so many new launch providers, so many new stocks, so much going on. Let me know if you like this kind of style of space news coverage. If you do, I might continue doing it, or if not, then maybe we'll continue focusing on individual stocks. Anyway, see you guys next time. Thanks. Bye.